This is episode 4, entitled Work. A doctor in the hospital, ER. I had no freaking idea what the heck I had chosen. Hello world, welcome to the show. We work, rest, and play. This is where we dissect, decipher, and demystify people's work and their lives outside of work. I'm Dan, your host, and welcome to episode 4. We continue on from the previous episode and are talking work with Sunny, where we continue going deep and getting real about what it's like to work as a doctor in the emergency department of a hospital. In this episode, we dive into things like what makes her day a good day versus a bad day? How did she end up choosing a career in medicine? What does it take to be a doctor in her field? What she loves and hates about her job? And more. Anyway, that's enough from me. Don't let me hold you up anymore. On to episode 4. Please enjoy. You got your typical days and you got your good days, your bad days, your average days. Generally, what will make your day a good day? You'll sort of get off your shift and say, yeah, that was a good day. Or do you have any of those?
Yeah, I think.
And what would make it a relatively good day?
Okay. A good day, like in any job, would be if you're working with good people.
Right.
And you don't end up kind of coming across or having to deal with any jerks. I think in terms of clinically, like the medicine that I say, I think it's a good day for me if I see something, in inverted commas, interesting.
Right.
Or if I have, I think this is probably personal more to me, but if I've been thanked.
By the patient? Or just in general?
In general, I think, but mostly by the patient. So, like in any job, if you're a bank teller, you can just do what they ask, or you can be friendly, or you can go the extra mile, or whatever. Same thing in the emergency department. And like you say, a lot of people who are in the doctor field or in healthcare in general are doing it because they want to actually contribute and help.
Right.
And so if you find someone who's genuinely in trouble and you do something to actually contribute to making that situation better, then it's like, and you get thanked for it, then it's like, well, that's my job done. I think in terms of bad day, I have become more and more, as work goes on, in negative about drunks. So belligerent drunk people tend to make my day a bit
of course.
bit of a downer.
Of course. Why would they end up in because they injured themselves or they got into an altercation and they end up in emergency?
Yeah, so if there is someone who obviously doesn't seem to have the capacity to make decisions for themselves and are found wandering the streets and looks like they might get hit by a car or it looks like they've actually already been injured, the police actually have the right to pick them up and bring them to actually be assessed.
Oh, so they haven't actually been
they didn't
injured
call the
per
ambulance.
se, necessarily.
But if the police believe that then they are incapable of making, or the ambulance believe that they're not capable of making decisions,
they'll be taken to ED, to emergency, to be assessed.
Yes.
But okay, so if it's a healthy male, who is
if it's someone who doesn't seem to have any sort of mental health issue or anything, and they're just being violent, then they'll be arrested.
Right.
But if they seem to actually not be coherent, or they seem to have injured themselves. So if a person was drunk and they're acting drunk, the police may just arrest them. But if it looks like they've hurt themselves, then they will bring the patient to the emergency department to be assessed to make sure that they're not actually behaving this way because they've got a serious head injury or something like that. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So getting those type of people really makes it difficult.
I mean, like, you know, there's varying degrees of, I mean, it's not drinking in itself,
of course,
you know, but it's the belligerent drunk. So, I think it's the opposite end of the scale to being thanked. So if someone recognizes they have a problem, recognize that you've done something to try to help them and thanks you for whatever you've done, that's great. But if someone, you know, is actively swearing and spitting at you, then not such a good day.
Geez, so I'm assuming you've got security holding them down, or I don't know, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, if the police bring them in, the police officers tend to stay with them. But yeah,
all yours, Sonny. Good luck.
Enjoy. For the listeners out there, I'm not a big person.
Wow. Okay. Cool. Right. So with your job in general, then, so you've described generally what contributes to a good day, what contributes to a bad day. And people, if you do end up hospital, please thank your doctors. You've heard it firsthand. They do actually really appreciate that. You may have already touched on it with what you've just said, but I want to be specific with these couple of questions. What is it about your job that you particularly love, if there is anything? What is it about your job that really gets you going?
I think for me, it's the immediacy of it, I guess.
What do you mean by that?
So being in the emergency department, whatever the person's problem is, it's happening now. And I can do something about it now. I guess in the other fields, there's, you know, obviously there may be just as much, but there's also more chronic problems.
Right.
That may take over and over care and that sort of thing. And I tend to have a short attention span. So, you know, my favourite thing would be to have a problem, get in there, fix it, patch them up, be on their way, that sort of thing.
Very good.
Yeah.
Anything else? That's of course that sort of gets you going.
Yeah, and well, the other thing for me is that definitely in emergency you see a real broad variety of things. It's, again, probably with the short attention span.
Pretty much, there's never a boring day, pretty much.
Yeah, you'll always be seeing different things. And different people.
Actually, that's a good point. Before you mentioned what makes a good day is when you see interesting cases. What constitutes interesting? Is it something new, something complicated, something not straightforward?
So yeah, it all of the above.
Okay, right.
Sort of thing. I think in general, if a doctor thinks you're interesting, that's not a good thing for you.
Hey, interns, come on, look at this one.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a bad sign. So basically, I think if a junior doctor thinks you're interesting, or if I call over a whole bunch of medical students to see you, it's because you have the classic signs of something, right? But if I bring over a whole bunch of senior doctors to see you, that's because you've got something weird and wonderful, and you probably don't want to be in the current position that you are.
Right. That's good to know.
Yeah.
Good to know. All right. So you like the immediacy, you like the variety. So obviously you like the go sort of nature about it. Right. Okay, so to flip it then, what is there stuff specific just in general about your job that really doesn't quite catch your fancy, really gets on your nerves? Other than belligerent drunks?
I think in general, a tough thing, not necessarily something that really gets me, but it's shift work.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's a bit of a toll to constantly be changing your body clock.
And of course, so it's not necessarily you're on shift, but the fact that your shifts are always changing.
Yeah. Right. So it's not like, you'll do 3 months of day shifts and then move on. It's always changing. So you do some day shifts, you do some evening shifts, you do some night shifts. That's the unfortunate thing of being a junior doctor is that, night shifts are part of it. And you just, you take the most sane person in the world and you make them stay up all night and sleep all day and they will turn into a crazy person.
Of course. Yeah. You mentioned, so is it generally the junior doctors that are put on the graveyard shifts?
So once at the moment at least. Once you are the specialist, you are on call at night, but you don't have to be physically present.
Right.
So you get to sleep in your bed till someone wakes you up.
Yep.
And the registrars are in charge during the night.
Oh, so registers have a rotation. Yeah. Right. So you always have
So during your entire training time, you will be doing that.
Nice. Yeah. So it's all shared, the love is shared, so to speak. Right. So you are on call every night?
Oh, no. It rotates. So, depending on how many consultants specialists look after the emergency department, you'll be on a rotating sort of thing. So if there's 28 of you, you'll be on call once in 28 days. If there's 2 of you, then you're on call every day. So
are you on call like for a week or a month?
Oh, no. So it depends on the emergency department rostering system. But for example, in one of my hospitals, if I work on the Saturday, then for the 24 hours of Saturday, I'm the specialist on call.
Okay. Because you're familiar with a lot of the patients, maybe?
Or so I will physically be present during 10 hours of the day. And during the times that I'm not physically there, if there's an issue, the registrar will call me.
Right. If they need to.
If they need to, yeah. And for the weekdays, generally it tends to be whoever's worked the evening shift will be on call for the night because, like you say, they're familiar with the patients.
Right.
Yeah. And they'll be on call until the 8 o'clock specialist in the morning turns up.
Okay. So, and when you're on call, do you get a lot of calls generally?
No, it's very rare.
Okay, for you, because I guess your escalation. So if the registrar can't sort it out, that's when they're.
Yeah.
So do registrars have to go on call?
No.
Okay, so
they only have to be present when they're present.
Okay.
I mean, there's like sick relief on call, that sort of thing.
Right.
So, if.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, but not on a regular basis.
Okay, so doctors in general, other than for escalation purposes, they don't actually have to go on call.
Oh, no, this is just in emergency.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Okay, this is just emergency, of course.
Yeah.
For non-emergency, like let's use cardiology, if you're not in the hospital, then generally there's a
registrar.
on-call.
Registrars can be on call as well for the cardiology.
Right.
And then if they can't handle it, then it gets escalated to their boss and that sort of thing. Yeah.
Are interns and residents ever put on call?
Only ever sick relief on call. Yeah.
Okay. Right. Right. Okay, that's good. Okay. Now, it's funny because when I moved into my role, I had no idea that there was an on-call concept for IT. For those that don't know,
you hate the pager.
Yes. We can talk about that some other time for sure. Okay, so that's good. Once again, it's just the thing I love about this is we can just go so deep into this. Obviously, I don't want to go too deep because then we just go down the rabbit hole. We touched on this before. Did you have even an inkling that you okay? When did you know you wanted to be a doctor to start off with?
Okay. Yeah. Well, you said like if you ask 10 kids,
yes,
half of them will say doctor.
Right.
It's because in the books you're either a doctor or a fireman.
Correct.
That you read when you're 5 years old. But I think that, to be honest, because I actually went into uni to do medicine as an undergraduate degree. So I went straight from high school into medicine.
Right.
And that means I made my decision when I was 17 years old.
Yes.
Yes. I had no freaking idea what the heck I had chosen.
Yes.
And I think that a lot of people who go into anything straight after being in high school have no idea.
Exactly.
You go into commerce and that doesn't necessarily mean anything in the real world to you when you choose it.
Exactly. Hence this podcast, had to plug that in.
And I think, if you ask my parents, apparently when I was like 7 years old, I dressed up as a doctor and that's when they decided that that's what I wanted to do. I think I've always wanted to help people in whatever capacity, and that when I was in Year 12, I got the marks to do it. So that's how I ended up in medicine. I think it's just lucky that it suited me. And I know that there's a lot of people people I know who I went through med school with who it just didn't suit, and who chose different paths because of it.
When you say didn't suit, was it more the workload in university, or was it just
different
they didn't like
sorts of things? Yeah. So some people, it was during uni that they decided that their interest in it was just not that much, and there are other people who made it through uni and became doctors and then just went, this is not what I thought being a doctor was,
Sure.
and this is not what I want to do for a living or whatever, and change paths from there. So, yeah. Even, within being a doctor, like I've said, there's like a billion different specialties. So there are lots of people I know who took time to choose what they want to do, and other people who went down a certain specialty path and then changed their minds because they found that it didn't suit them and went into another specialty. Yeah.
Do you know why those, especially those who graduated from medicine, became doctors and then decided it wasn't for them? Are you privy to some reasons why they made those decisions?
No, I mean, I haven't specifically spoken to them about it, but I think that you don't really get an experience of what it is to be a doctor while you're a student.
Right.
And that you only really figure out what it really is like once you're in it.
And you're not actually exposed to it until you actually graduate.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Because as much as you may spend time in the hospitals and do things with the doctors, the responsibility is not yours.
Right. So to clarify, when you're studying, during your university studies, you still have to go to hospital and learn there. But
so to varying degrees, some university courses will start you from day one having some time in the hospital.
Right.
Some will, leave it till you are a more senior student. But you get attached to the different teams. And you can't do any of the prescribing and that sort of stuff, but you go, you see the patients, you speak to them, you examine them, you learn what it is that you need to know to be a doctor. But certainly from my experience, I had a very different concept of what it is to actually work as a doctor once you became an intern. Yeah. I think it's probably like that with every career. You just have no idea until you're in it. Yeah.
Right. So when you were an intern, you said it was a shock.
Yeah.
Was it a shock in a good way or a bad way, or just more sort of just neutral?
Good and bad. Yeah. I think for me, and maybe that's just because I didn't I wasn't the A student through med school or whatever. I did find that I learnt a lot more in my year as an intern on the job than I did in 6 years of university.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I would think that would be standard, wouldn't it? Yeah.
Because a lot of the stuff that you learn isn't practically useful, especially when you're a junior. So,
can I ask what rotation you did in intern? Like what areas you went through? Do you remember?
I know the first thing I did was emergency.
Oh, right.
And then I did urology.
What's urology, sorry, for those listeners? And I don't know what it is.
Urology
is that kidneys?
Yeah, kidneys and urine waterworks.
Okay.
Pipes.
Right, cool.
It's a surgical specialty.
Okay, right, yep.
And then I did general medicine.
As in general practice?
No, general medicine. So in smaller hospitals, they will not necessarily have teams that are divided into the different medical specialties. They will have a general medicine team and a general surgical team. So
you're a generalist in like everything. You know a bit about everything pretty much. Right.
That's the idea.
Yep.
And then I can't remember the last two that I did. Oh, orthopedics.
Mm-hmm. And orthopedics is
bone doctors.
Bones.
And then I can't really remember the last.
It was a while back.
It was a while ago.
Okay, so when you did emergency for the first rotation, did you know, yep, I want to do this? Or
no, actually, I, by sheer coincidence, happened to have my first term as an intern as emergency and my first term as a resident, so exactly 1 year later in emergency. And realised that, wow, I must have actually learned something during my 12 months because it was much easier the second time. And one of the things that as an intern, definitely, and to some degree as a resident, is that when you're on the other teams, you tend to do a lot of clerking without necessarily making decisions or seeing patients on your own.
Yes.
Whereas in the emergency department, you are doing those things. So it captured my interest a lot.
Felt empowered, perhaps?
I felt like I was actually doing something useful.
Right.
Yeah, as opposed to paperwork.
Right. Adding value. So to speak.
Yeah. So that's, I pretty much decided in my resident year.
In your resident year, wow. Okay, so we'll go into the qualifications. So obviously, I'm sure in any country to get into medicine, you need to be very academically strong. I know in Australia it's something that the entrance mark. I don't care how the mark is calculated, but if it's out of 100 and it's 99 point something, like 3.5 or 4, I think it was at the time, you got to be up there academically. There's no denying that. So
well, it's different now.
Right. So so now it's a postgrad degree. Is it in Australia?
So there's a lot of postgrad degrees. There's med schools just popping out of the woodworks lately for some reason. But the focus has been pulled away from sheer pure numbers. So back when I got into med school, it was just based on your HSC mark, so your Year 12 final exam mark.
Right, exactly. So HSC is High School Certificate, which is Australia, New South. So
like the SATs.
The SATs in the States, so it's the university entrance exam here in New South Wales in Australia. And
since then they've veered away. So now there's 2 components. So that they are also interviewing to try and get the appropriate personalities, I guess, into medicine, not just people who get the marks.
Gotcha. Yep.
And postgraduate degrees obviously are totally different. You have to sit a entrance exam. So I think it's the GAMSATs at the moment.
That's GAMSAT?
Yeah. So it's a generic test. It's not unique to medicine that varying postgraduate degrees will use to judge whether someone's academically up to the mark to get in. So I think medicine uses it. I think it's international as well, so you can use it overseas.
Yeah. Is it more like I've heard a lot of the GAMS now, but what is it? Is it like an IQ test? Is it reading comprehension, math? What is it?
So it's not like a science test. It's what they call an aptitude test.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's trying to test that you've got smarts in not just having knowledge that you can memorize, but in everything from visual-spatial skills to general knowledge, communication, that sort of stuff.
So it's a written exam, multiple choice.
I think it's a multiple choice,
Yeah. So it's sort of like generic aptitude, like critical thinking.
Yes. And also choices. So one of the things is that they will present you with scenarios and ask you to choose the best option. For example, that has a bit of ethics involved in the choices.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So the actual aptitude, and correct me if I'm wrong, like, is there like your general IQ type of questions where what's the next thing in this, like if there's a
some
pattern,
kind of pattern or something,
what's the next thing in this? So that's the IQ type. Then is there like a reading comprehension analysis type of thing in there?
I can't remember if there's a reading comprehension sort of thing. I do remember that there was, with the ethics part of it, there was, this is not the GAMSATs, by the way. This is a similar exam that I've done, which I can't remember the acronym for at the moment. But they actually presented you with tricky scenarios where there's no right or wrong answer, and they present you with 4 different options of what you would do. So, someone's in trouble, they need money or whatever, and seeing to what would be your optimum solution to this problem. When we came out of the exam, some of my friends who took it were like, are they trying to weed out the sociopaths? So, yeah. There are some things that I read in there that is clearly unethical or criminal or whatever.
Right.
And I thought, oh, geez, who would pick that?
Sort of like there's a psychometric sort of level to, but that was a separate exam to the GAMSAT.
Yeah.
Okay. But
I've never set the GAMSAT myself,
Oh, of course, because yours wasn't a...
mine was,
Oh, okay. See, okay. What am I asking? Okay.
Undergrad.
Sure, of course. So for you it was undergrad, but today it's... So if you've got a bachelor degree in something, does it have to be something medical related, science related?
I believe that it can be any undergraduate degree, but there are some prerequisite knowledge you need. So you may need to do some subjects so that you're at the same baseline science level that everyone is.
Like in which you can attend during the holidays.
So it doesn't have to be a whole course.
Gotcha. And I'm assuming you would have to have reached a certain level of your undergraduate degree to be able to qualify to apply?
You'd have to have completed a bachelor.
It doesn't matter whether it's with a certain average, like an academic level that you have to have attained?
I think that varies on which medical school that you're applying to.
Right. Okay. Because I guess so today I guess it's postgrad, so you don't need to worry about getting that 99 point crazy mark.
There's still an undergraduate program.
Oh, there is still,
but
right.
Even for that, they now have another interview and another exam.
Right, so it's more steps to make sure that you are appropriate for the role. Yeah. Okay, so there are postgrad options out there and there are undergraduate.
Options, yeah.
Now, I've always wondered, so obviously people who study medicine are well above average when it comes to, let's just call it intelligence, for want of a better. Yeah, intelligence. Is that, do you, with your experience, I mean, is that critical in the role? Like, do you just need to have common sense, or is it actually really important? Yes, you need to have a good brain on your shoulders to be able to make a correct diagnosis, or is it more just, okay, as long as you've got common sense and you know how to go do deduction from, logical deduction, you don't need to be a super brain to do it, or is it actually legit that you really know to be able to do this job well? You really should.
Well, certainly amongst the doctors, I know there are, the professorial type who just revel in the academia of it.
Right.
And just know everything down to the field.
Sure.
And there are people who are far more practical and less bookish.
Yes.
But I think in general, to get through the process as it is currently, you just need, there's an enormous volume of information that you have to be able to store. But to be honest with you, I think the more important thing is to actually have common sense when you come down to the practical things of it. Because a lot of the decisions that you're making are not necessarily going to be about the medical part of it. Because, what we can and cannot do is certainly something we need to know and to understand, and the side effects and all that sort of stuff. But when you see someone and you're trying to actually adapt it to that person, I think common sense is just way more important in being, in inverted commas, a good doctor. And seeing that, yes, this might be the most scientifically best way to go about things, but that it just does not work for this person. Is something they can't teach you.
Because I guess I can definitely see why you would need to be very smart to be a doctor, because the human body, the miracle that it is, it's so many variables that can happen within that. So I'm guessing to be able to handle that scope, you'd need to be pretty switched on to be able to handle that type of thing. That's my personal ignorant perspective.
They tell me.
Right. Cool. So obviously with medicine itself, there's no real other way to get into it other than through university, whether it's undergrad or postgrad. So I guess that's pretty black and white. For those who are thinking about pursuing a career in this area, I guess medicine in general and potentially specifically the emergency department. Is there any sort of specific advice you'd like to give to them if they're thinking about it? Is there anything that you think would be helpful that they should know about?
I think medicine in general, I think that if you're thinking about it, you should try to find someone who's gone through the process and actually talk to them about what it's really like. As in what it means for your lifestyle. For example, depending on, even no matter what specialty you do, getting to what we call the end of studying is going to take you an enormous chunk of your young life. And unlike, I've got friends who have gone through university as well, but, not done something as time taxing as medicine. So, got their degrees, got into the workforce, and kind of left the study side of things, aside, and got much more forward in their life, if you know what I mean, whilst we were still slugging away trying to finish the uni degree. And also, it's a big commitment even beyond passing that exam.
Of course. Yep.
To go into training and that sort of thing, and a uniquely difficult lifestyle, because it is a 24-hour sort of job, at least for the first few years, no matter which specialty you pick. So, and unfortunately hierarchical system where as a junior doctor you're always going to be under the thumb of, the more senior doctors and under the thumb of the public hospital system. So my advice would be that if you're thinking about medicine, actually talk to someone who's in it to get an idea of whether that's something that suits you, because there are plenty of people who would be great at it, but it is a give and take. You have to actually commit to the fact that you are going to have no life for certain periods while you pass exams and all this sort of stuff, and whether you and your family and your partners and your friends are willing to accept that is actually a decision that you need to make, which if I think back as a 17-year-old, I didn't really know what I was signing up for.
Well, exactly. And if you don't know a doctor in that field, ask me and I'll find someone, and hopefully we can set something up for you guys and take it from there.
Yeah, we're nice.
Okay, thank you very much, Sonia. That's wise advice, which I'm sure will be very useful for prospective doctors out there, hopefully. Now, you mentioned the copious amounts of study, which I'm also very curious and wanting to understand better, because I know that you guys have to study like forever. So for yourself, for those who do an undergraduate degree in medicine in Australia anyway, in general, I'm sure it's roughly similar between the states in Australia, but for us here in the state of New South Wales, how many years is the undergraduate degree?
So the undergraduate's 6 years.
6 years.
Yeah.
You come out with one bachelor, or is it multiple?
Multiple.
And what is that?
So the thing that supposedly defines a medical doctor is the MBBS, Bachelor of Medicine, Bachelor of Science, Bachelor of Surgery. Sorry.
Say that again. MBBS is Bachelor of Medicine and Bachelor of Science. Surgery. Bachelor of Surgery. But the M is before the B, so it's medicine.
Yeah, I don't know why that
something.
is.
Okay, all right. But basically, Bachelor
I choose
of Medicine.
To say that it's because of Latin, but
Probably
I'm just pulling that out of my butt.
I was going to say that too, as in Latin, not. Yeah.
So the way that the degree I did worked was that it was split into two parts. So there was the first part was 3 years where you were pretty much the whole time in the grounds of the university, learning basic sciences, so that if someone decided to move on and not continue the second half, they would actually graduate with a Bachelor of Science.
Oh, okay. Yep.
And the second half was predominantly based in the hospital, and that completing that at the end, you'd end up with a MBBS BSc. Bachelor of Medicine, Bachelor of Surgery, Bachelor of Science.
Right. Oh, so Bachelor of Medicine and Bachelor of Science are two bachelor degrees.
Yep, Bachelor of Medicine, Bachelor of Surgery.
Sorry, Bachelor of Surgery. I keep saying science.
They come together though, as an
right.
MBBS.
Gotcha. Yeah. So you've got actually 3 bachelor degrees.
Apparently, yeah.
That's pretty cool. Bachelor of Science, in the first 3 years, if someone decides to move on, Bachelor of Science, what's the major in that? Is it medicine, medical?
Medical science.
Medical science, right. Right, and that makes up the 6 years.
So postgraduate degrees, you get the MBBS part because you've already done something else undergraduate to get what is the equivalent of that science bachelor. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So you can have a Bachelor of Arts, Science, Engineering, whatever, and then postgrad you get MBBS, Bachelor of Medicine, Bachelor of Surgery. Okay.
Those are 4 or 5 years? The ones?
The postgrad ones?
Yeah.
On top of
whatever that you did for your undergrad.
So if your undergrad bachelor which is generally 3 or 4 years, then and MBBS as a postgrad is 4 to 5 years, then you're looking at 7 to 9 years of study.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, but that's not where it potentially stops.
No.
So okay, so you've graduated from medicine after 7 to 9 years. Mm-hmm. And then you think, so then from here you can be a medical career officer like you mentioned?
You're an intern first.
Oh, sorry, you're an intern first?
So during internship, basically, this is your corporate equivalent probationary period.
Right, of course.
So you are not a fully fledged, can go off and do your own thing doctor. Yep. Mm-hmm. You are a doctor, but to be a fully fledged, fully registered doctor that can become a career medical officer, you have to pass your internship.
Mm-hmm.
So during your 5 terms, you have a supervisor who will do an assessment with you for each of the terms, and you have to be a satisfactory in all 5 of those in order to pass your internship and be granted full registration.
How is that assessed? Is it a written, verbal interview?
Oh, no. So it's a work-based assessment.
Oh, so it's just...
like performance management sort of stuff.
Right, okay. Gotcha. I'm assuming you generally would pass that as long as you don't do anything or not, unless you're extremely not satisfactory, or do quite a lot of people?
Most people pass it.
Right, okay, cool. After intern, you are a resident in your 2nd year.
Yep.
And then you're a registrar.
Or career medical officer.
Or a career medical officer. And so then, is it at that registrar point, when can you start considering specialization?
So usually people will become a registrar having considered what specialty they want to do. Mm-hmm. So unfortunately, no matter what you do, there's never going to be no study. Because as a doctor, you have to keep up to date with current trends in the literature, and evidence-based medicine is a big thing, so that you have to be up to date with the research so that you are doing things at the correct standard of practice. Mm-hmm. So even if it's not completely formalized in this is my course and I have to do these many assignments and that sort of thing, every doctor has to make sure that they're keeping up their knowledge and various, depending on, which college you belong to or which registration thing, you have to prove that you have done courses or done your own reading or done whatever to keep up that level of skill. So in terms of that, there's no end.
With that, is that you've got to do something every year?
So there's a certain number of credits per year that you have to.
What does that entail? Is that like a lecture for an evening in a year?
For example, you could attend a conference, right? So you're hearing lectures by the latest about the latest research and that sort of thing. You can attend a course where you actually learn a skill yourself. You can do online learning programs to refresh your knowledge in things that you've already learned, that sort of stuff.
Is it a big commitment in time, like generally?
Not, because it tends to. I guess I can only really speak for my specialty, but because it tends to be part of your job. So as an emergency specialist, there's a certain number of days that you are given not doing clinical work, so you're in the office, and during that time you do these sorts of things. Okay,
and so for yourself, for example, is it just, can you get it over and done within a day, or is it a couple of hours, a week?
So it would be different things. You can't just do it all in one thing. So, yeah. So if you are, for example, there's some course that is being taught to junior doctors if you train to become an instructor, that will contribute.
Right.
Yeah, and that might just be part of something that you're doing in your career. So it's not you going out of your way, but it contributes to that.
Okay. So as long as you actively participate in your job, it's not particularly taxing in terms of right, because there's stuff you should be doing anyway.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Very good. Okay. So so potentially in your third year, you know roughly what you want to do as a specialty, assuming you want to go that path. So then what happens then?
So the way it works in Australia is that their different specialties have their own colleges. And these colleges will mandate whatever training program or an accreditation process is required for each specialty for you to become a specialist. And then there's a separate thing, which is a medical registration body, which is a body that looks after registration in general, so your ability to practice as a doctor. So once you've decided whatever specialty you want to do, you apply to the college to become a member as a trainee. So there, some colleges you have to have a certain amount of experience. Some colleges you have to go through an application process. Some colleges you have to do an exam. Some colleges actually have a restricted number of trainees they will take per year. Some colleges don't. Every college has a fee. And then once you're on that training program, so you can, separate to this, there are jobs. So even if you've decided this is the specialty A is what I want to do, it doesn't necessarily mean that you are going to be able to get a job that will be an accredited position by the college as a trainee. So you can't do nothing because you will A, de-skill, and B, be poor. So there are unaccredited positions where you're doing the similar work of that position. You are working with specialists in that field, but the training program will not recognize the time that you have spent there to contribute to your training because there's no formalized training program associated with that job. So you have basically several obligations to fulfill with that college. One is the time, so the amount of experience that they expect you to get in various areas. So, for example, in emergency, there's a certain amount of time that you need to work as a junior, as a provisional trainee, so the first part, before that you will be considered to go on to being an advanced trainee.
This is after your application has been accepted. Yes.
But there's also various specific experiences you have to get. So you have to, work as in the emergency department a certain amount of time. You have to work, anesthetics a certain amount of time or whatever. So that's the experience side of things. And then separate to that, the colleges will have different expectations in terms of exams that you have to pass. So pretty much most colleges, and not every college will have an entrance exam to actually get in, but most colleges have a exam that you have to pass to transition from being the junior trainee to the senior trainee. And some colleges will have an exit exam as well. So at the end of that senior trainee period, before you become a full-fledged specialist. And some specialties are very, very unique in that they don't take a lot of training. So it is very, very popular, but very precious few slots that you can go into. So if you are realistically wanting to do those jobs, even though it is not actually a requirement of the college that you do so, to be considered, you need like a PhD.
What's an example with very few?
So like ophthalmology.
Ophthalmology, what's that?
Eye specialist.
Oh, right.
Is a specialty where you have to have done some form of, research and other things to be competitive enough.
Wow. Okay. Right. So, for yourself, to go through the process of specializing, how many years?
So if I had done it all in a row without, taking breaks and working full time the whole time, it would be a 5.5 year process.
5.5 years on top of the 7 to 9 years that you studied.
Yeah.
Right. But during the 5.5 years, you would be working as an unaccredited.
No, accredited because so sorry, I confused you.
Yeah.
So you would not be a fully fledged specialist. So you would be a trainee.
Yes.
The accredited and unaccredited thing is that sometimes you will have to work in a job which is still in your field, but the college will not recognize it.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So you need 5.5 years of college recognized time.
Mm-hmm.
So if your job for 1 year was not recognized by the college, then you're going to have to do 6.5 years.
Right, gotcha. Yeah. And generally it's unaccredited because you're working before the college has accepted your application.
Yeah. You're working in a job that the college does not recognize as a trainee position.
Oh, okay.
There's a bit of a thing where the college gets to kind of decide all the rules in the way that that Australia works.
Right, okay. But essentially, if you want any accredited, any hours to contribute, it would have to be
in
at
an
least
accredited position.
In an accredited position after the college has accepted your application.
Yep.
Right. Are there multiple colleges for the same areas of specialty, or is it just...
No, every specialty has their own one-year college.
Specific
Monopoly all the way.
Wow. Okay. So, are there some other examples where there are popular few slot specialties?
Dermatology.
Dermatology, right? Any others that come to mind?
Yeah. Well, not as few slots as dermatology,
right.
But there are certainly competitive ones where there are reasonable number of slots, but it's very popular, and so it's difficult to get into. So orthopedics, neurosurgery.
Right. But that 5.5 years, in your case, if you'd done it full time, if you do it part time, obviously it'll take you however long.
Exactly, yeah. So it would be a full time equivalent. So if you worked half time the whole time, then it would take you 10, 11 years.
Right. Okay. Now, of course, the problem with this, and this always did my head in, to be honest. So let's say you do it full time, which means you're not working.
No, you're working.
You're working as accredited.
Yeah.
So as acknowledged. What's the word I'm looking for?
Trainee?
Yeah, well, you're doing hours that are acknowledged by the college, and you are getting paid for it.
Yes.
Right, okay.
Because you're working in the hospital.
Are you getting paid a reasonable wage for that, or is it relatively low? Because
unfortunately, I don't really know what other people get paid.
But you can survive off.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Of course, you do the 5.5 years, and then you sit the exam. But you may not pass the exam.
Yes.
And then you're not accredited. So
so you remain a trainee until all those criteria are fulfilled.
So if you fail the exam, what happens? Can you just sit it again the next day?
Different colleges have different rules. So some colleges restrict how many times you're allowed to try before they go, look, this is really not for you. Or there's a time restriction. So if you don't finish it all within a total 10-year period, or something like that. Yeah.
Wow. So you could easily devote another half decade to a decade to studying, but not actually get there for one reason or another. Have you heard of a lot of cases of that?
I don't know about half decades, but I've known people who've basically had like several goes at passing exams, because it's not like necessarily that 100 people sit the exam, 50 people pass. So there can be people who are sitting it multiple times before they actually get through, and that can be quite common throughout all the colleges. And I know of lots of people who tried a few and then just gave up because it was just taking too long.
Too long. Now, whether or not they pass, is it 100% the performance in their exam, or is it more also based on quotas and the distribution of how many people get in versus failing?
Some of it is to do with the quotas, but it varies from college to college how much they restrict that. And So, for example, in emergency, the powers that be were very much encouraging people to join and become trainees because they needed more doctors in the field. And similar to what it was sort of like for intensive care a few years before that. But colleges tend to go in cycles, so when you go through a period of having that huge encouragement, eventually it catches up to a degree where there's too many trainees getting through and no jobs for them at the other end. So, yeah, it's always a bit of a cycle.
And do they manage that? As in, do they reduce the number of
but it always
students
lags.
they pass? Right.
So I know there have been people who have finished everything, but there are no jobs for them to actually step into and are left in limbo mode.
So what happens in that case if they don't become fully qualified? I guess they just continue working.
Yeah, no, as in they're fully qualified. They've gotten everything. They've ticked all the boxes, but there's no consultant level jobs for them to actually step into. So they end up having to do jobs that they're overqualified for.
Right. For example, working in the hospital.
Or staying in a registrar position when you are a consultant or something like that, because there's no consultant job for you to move on to.
And when you say consultant...
Oh, I do apologise. Consultant is what you call the specialist level.
Right, okay. Where you are an independent, fully accredited specialist. Hence you can effectively, just practice as you see fit. Right, as opposed to someone who's got all the knowledge, they may not have necessarily passed the exam or met the final requirement or current requirements, so they can continue working in their current capacity, just not as a consultant. So, for example, those specialists who have their own practice,
yes,
they are
fully fledged specialists.
Can you have your own practice without having that accreditation? Formal accreditation.
So, if you are saying that you are a dermatologist, you must, in Australia, have the full accreditation to be able to say that.
Right. Otherwise, if you have the knowledge of a dermatologist but you don't have the accreditation, you are a skin specialist in a hospital?
Yeah, you're most likely to be a registrar in a hospital.
Registrar, but you wouldn't call yourself a dermatologist.
Dermatology registrar.
Dermatology registrar. Okay, there you go. There's the distinction. Wow, okay. It's all very complicated. I won't go too much more into that. I think I went a little bit too deep on that one, but all very interesting anyway. Okay, but essentially... The crux of it is it's a very big commitment in terms of study.
It is a lifetime commitment.
It is a lifetime commitment. It's an ongoing commitment, but that initial accreditation, and I'm sure medicine's not the only field with that type of thing, but medicine is probably one of the most well known for that type of thing. Last question on that one is, when do you start earning money as a doctor? As an intern. So you start getting paid.
Once you are called doctor, they have to pay.
You're getting paid. Right. Would you consider the wage of an intern a reasonable adult wage, or is it deliberately like, okay, so is it, so let's say you got your average wage in Sydney is, say, let's pretend it's $30,000 a year.
Yeah.
Right. So would we say an intern's income is well above average, or just like...
Yeah, no, it is a professional income. So it's always going to be above average.
Good. Okay, good. Because I just hear a lot of the poor doctor thing. I don't know if it's just rumor or I was misinformed, where a lot of doctors in their early years, internships in particular, just seem to be struggling financially. I don't know why.
I think part of it is because you have had a lot more time not working.
Oh, so relatively.
To catching up to people who have started work earlier than you.
Right.
So, people do, different sort of part-time things or whatever while they're studying, and people who've done undergraduate degrees often have worked in that field before they go into the postgraduate degree and that sort of thing.
Of course.
Basically, you are going into a phase of not being able to do any full-time work when everyone else is.
Yes.
So, yes. So you're behind in that sense.
That makes sense.
And also you come out with a rather large HECS debt.
Yes. And for those listening, the HECS debt is
university fee.
Where we the HECS system is it's called something else now, I think, help for something.
Basically, university loan system.
Where you loan your university fees from the government, and then you don't start repaying that until you start earning above a certain threshold, and you essentially end up paying it back through a little bit more tax through back to the government, and you have the option of paying it back lump sum. But if you pay it by the standard sort of monthly repayment where it's deducted from your wage, you are paying interest against it. So it's a loan. But personally, I think it's a fantastic system for those who are not able to fork out the large sums of money for a university exam. So if you are in financial hardship, you are still there's nothing to stop you from actually going out and getting a university degree. Textbook fees aside, which can get quite expensive, but the actual fees itself are good. Speaking of fees, one last question. You mentioned when you apply to the specialty colleges, different colleges have different things and they have various fees. Are those fees to apply exorbitantly high, or are they just
each college has a different fee.
Right. Are we talking tens of dollars, hundreds of dollars, or thousands of dollars?
So for my college, while I was a trainee, it was hundreds of dollars per year.
Per year?
I know that for some of the surgical trainees, it can be thousands of dollars.
Thousands of dollars. And do you need to pay it ongoing to maintain your membership?
Yeah. Every year.
Right. Okay.
So it's supposed to contribute to the costs that go towards administration as well as your training and all that sort of stuff.
Sure.
And you will find varying degrees of agreement as to whether it is worth it or not.
Of course. And you keep paying that even though after you've become fully accredited?
Yes, because you're now paying membership to the college.
Right. And that rate sort of remains relatively static, or does it keep going up or down? Or?
So far, it just kept going up.
Okay. All right. Cool. But I guess, but if you're at that stage, then I guess financially you're relatively
you are
comfortable.
Getting paid more.
So it's okay. All right. Right. So I think we'll close it off there in terms of specific questions. In terms of the emergency specialist. The very last question, I keep saying last question here, I keep coming up with new questions. And I actually personally really like this question. If you could do it all over again, you know what's coming next. Is there a different occupational career you would have pursued? Or curious about?
If I could turn back time and talk to my 17-year-old self.
Yes.
I would have a stern chat about what this means. But I think for me, I am lucky in that I have fallen into the career that suits me. So I might try to beat the naivety a bit out of myself, but I'd probably still choose this career. Yeah.
Wow. 2 out of 2 so far have said that. There you go. Of course, Dennis
statistician that you are.
Said the same thing. And it's very funny because I just in a social context that response is relatively rare. I think. I don't think often people at least say, "Oh, I don't necessarily regret my choice, but would have been interesting if I did this." But no, I think if you can say that, you're in a good spot. And
totally lucky.
I'm very happy for you.
I think it's pretty much because it certainly wasn't anything I knew when I was 17 and made the decision.
Yes.
Yeah, it's just quite lucky.
Fantastic. No, that's great. Okay, we'll close it off there for the work part of the podcast. We'll just take a quick break and we'll come right back. And that's it for episode 4. Thank you very much for listening. In the next episode, we change it up and talk about what Sunny does for rest and play to chillax and recharge outside of work. That episode is also lots of fun with lots of info as well, so check it out when you get a chance. Also, if you've been enjoying the episodes and you'd love to support the show, there is a way. You can become a patron via patreon.com. That is patreon.com. And you can find us by searching for We Work, Rest and Play, all one word, from the Patreon homepage. You'll gain a bunch of exclusive access and benefits, so definitely worth checking out. Every little bit of support is a huge help and goes a very long way in keeping this show alive. And of course, thank you very much for listening. Don't forget to follow or subscribe to the podcast to make sure you automatically receive new episodes. And if and when you feel like it, it would be great if you could spend just a few seconds to leave a review to let me know what you think about the show. You can also refer to the website, weworkrestandplay.com for the show notes, and we shall continue talking with Sunny in the next episode. And so until then, live life, take care, keep smiling. The intro and outro music is an extract from the track entitled Falling Down by the artist named Ryan Little and is used in accordance with the Creative Commons Attribution License. Thank you very much, Ryan. Further references can also be found in the show notes at www.weworkrestandplay.com.